My daughter-in-law ripped the glasses off my face and sneered. Take a good look at yourself, Margaret. Pathetic, useless, done. I didn't argue. I went upstairs, pulled out the deed she never thought I kept. The house she bragged about owning? Still in my name. She disrespected her mother-in-law. I returned the favor in writing. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The glass of sweet tea trembled in Lorraine's hand before she set it down with quiet finality. The condensation left a faint ring on the linen tablecloth, embroidered, hand-stitched, and now thoroughly ignored by the woman seated across from her. Jessa leaned forward, lips painted in a shade that matched nothing in the room but her own vanity. You can't even see straight, Lorraine, she said with a sugar coating only strangers might fall for. How do you expect to manage a house? Then came the motion, swift, cruel, and completely unexpected. Lorraine barely blinked before her glasses were yanked from her face. The world shifted. Blurred lines, swirling light, the faint shimmer of candle flames now smudged into halos. Lorraine didn't cry out, didn't flinch. She only reached out instinctively and touched air. The dining room fell into a stunned silence, pierced only by the soft scrape of a fork on ceramic. Harper moved first. Her chair screeched back as she knelt beside her grandmother, finding the glasses near the leg of the table. Here, Grandma, she whispered, her voice shaking but controlled. They didn't break. Lorraine took them with both hands, pressing the frame gently between her fingers. Her breath was even, but her pulse roared in her ears. She slid the glasses back onto her face, adjusting the crooked frame without a word. Matt didn't look up. He dabbed his mouth with a napkin, folded it neatly, and began stacking plates. No words, no outrage. Just his usual quiet escape. Jessa smiled, as if nothing had just happened. You'd honestly be safer in assisted living. We've looked into options. She punctuated the sentence with a sip of Chardonnay, her wedding band catching the chandelier light. The room smelled faintly of rosemary chicken, lemon-scented furniture polish, and betrayal. Lorraine pushed back her chair and stood, spine straight. She left her half-finished meal and made her way down the hallway. Her steps didn't falter until she reached the bedroom door and closed it behind her. Inside, everything was quiet, familiar. Her sanctuary. She knelt beside the cedar hope chest at the foot of her bed and unlocked it. Beneath old quilts and photos, she uncovered the fireproof safe. A few moments later, the combination clicked. The year Clay had notarized their home purchase, the anniversary she and Walter signed the deed. She opened it, fingers cool against the metal. The folder was there. Smooth navy blue. Gold-stamped lettering. She laid it flat on the bed and opened it. The edges of the paper looked the same until they didn't. There it was, in unmistakably black ink, a co-owner line. Her heart slowed. The air in the room thickened, heavy with disbelief. She leaned in. The name next to hers was new, fresh, printed neatly beside hers as if it had always belonged there. But she hadn't signed it. She knew her own handwriting. She hadn't written in cursive since her arthritis began stiffening her knuckles 5 years ago. And yet, there it was, a smooth, elegant loop of ink beside her own name. Jessa Kinsey. Not Matt. Not Harper. Jessa. Lorraine stared at the page, blinked hard behind her bent lenses, and then ran her fingertips across the signature. There was no indentation, no pressure marks, no muscle hesitation. Whoever signed it hadn't done it with real conviction. Just confidence. And confidence, Lorraine had taught her students, wasn't the same thing as truth. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached again for the folder. She lifted each document slowly, scanning page by page, looking for the moment someone else decided her life wasn't hers anymore. Outside, she heard the soft tinkle of ice cubes being dropped into glasses. Jessa was probably preparing dessert. Lorraine could almost hear the knife against the pie tin. Apple, maybe, store-bought. No cinnamon in the house ever tasted like the real thing since Walter passed. Lorraine closed the folder, slid it into a canvas bag, and stood slowly. Her reflection in the closet mirror was sharper now. Not just visually, something else. Something steadier. As she turned off the bedroom light, her phone buzzed once on the nightstand. Assisted living options tour, confirmed for Thursday at 11 a.m. She didn't blink. She just whispered to herself, "Let's see who's really blind." The courthouse clock chimed 10 as Lorraine stepped out of the car, the deed folder clutched tight beneath her arm like a book she never meant to lend. Downtown Lexington still held its old brick charm, arched windows, faded signage, tree canopies rustling over benches no one seemed to sit on anymore. She bypassed the receptionist at Rowan and Finch Law and walked straight into Clay Rowan's office. The door was ajar, as always, and the scent of lemon oil and aging leather welcomed her like an old friend. Clay looked up from behind a pile of closing documents, his tie askew and glasses low on his nose. "Well, hell," he said, rising slowly. "I was wondering when you'd come in with that face." Lorraine set the folder on his desk and said nothing, just opened it. Clay pulled the pages out, adjusted his glasses, and narrowed his eyes at the signature. "I stopped signing in cursive 3 years ago," Lorraine said. "That "L" has too much flair. And I never looped the "k." Arthritis made sure of that." Clay didn't argue. He didn't have to. He flipped to the transaction index on his laptop and typed rapidly. "Let's see who tried to get clever," he muttered. Lorraine sat in the cracked leather chair across from him, eyes locked on the screen. It didn't take long. Clay clicked through property access logs, tracing a metadata trail that hadn't been wiped clean. "There it is," he murmured, voice flattening. "Request to add co-ownership, submitted digitally 3 weeks ago. From a user account with two-factor tied to a Matt Kinsey." Lorraine's hands curled into her lap. "My son doesn't even read the fine print on phone bills. He doesn't initiate this kind of thing." Clay raised an eyebrow. "Maybe not. But someone close to him used his login, and they were counting on you not noticing. Most folks wouldn't." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small Ziploc bag containing the printer paper Harper had dug out of the recycling bin that morning. "Test print," she said. "Found it still warm. Same signature. Different dates. Different forms." Clay took the page with care. "You're telling me Jessa's running her own forgery workshop in your guest bedroom?" "I'm saying," Lorraine replied, "this wasn't an accident. This was rehearsed." Clay stood up, went to the filing cabinet, and removed a thin envelope labeled Title Contest Preemptive Defense. He laid it on the desk between them. "You'll want this. We file it today. I put a hold on any action involving that title for 30 days minimum. That gives us time to investigate and file a fraud notice if needed." Lorraine didn't blink. "File it." The printer in Clay's office began whirring, filling the room with the rhythmic churn of official retaliation. Lorraine stared out the window as a breeze pushed golden leaves against the pane. Jessa had never liked that tree, said it shed too much. A sharp knock startled them both. It was Harper, holding up her phone. "Grandma, you need to see this." She entered quickly, sliding into the seat beside Lorraine and pulling up a photo. "This was in the printer's job history," she said. "Someone printed 5 variations of your signature. One even had a practice watermark on." Clay let out a breath. "That seals it. This wasn't just digital manipulation. They were trying to mimic your actual penmanship. And not very well," Lorraine added quietly. Harper reached into her hoodie pocket and passed over a sticky note. "Also," Val texted, "someone came into the credit union last week asking about title transfer facilitation options for a senior client. She said the woman had frosted lip gloss and smelled like department store grapefruit." Lorraine didn't need a name. She stood, her back straight as the flagpole in her front yard. "They thought I was watching TV and forgetting things. I was watching them, and remembering everything." Clay handed her the newly printed filing. "Take this copy home. I'll email the judge's clerk now." Lorraine stepped out into the sunlight, the folder tucked firmly against her ribs. When she reached her mailbox, there was a cream envelope resting on top of the usual circulars and credit card offers. Her name was handwritten in bubbly cursive, and inside, a single glossy pamphlet gleamed under the afternoon sun. "Golden Oaks Assisted Living Options Tour. Confirmed for Thursday at 11 a.m. Her fingers trembled, not from age, but rage. The morning sun filtered through the slatted blinds, casting long bars of light across the kitchen floor. Lorraine stood at the stove, turning off the burner just as the water began to boil. The smell of steeping Earl Grey mingled with the cloying scent of mango pineapple smoothies that Jessa had already placed on the table, tall glasses with striped paper straws, and too much cheer. "Good morning," Jessa chimed, voice dripping with a honeyed tone that didn't reach her eyes. "I made you something light and nutritious. Mango's good for memory, you know." Lorraine turned, teacup in hand. Her robe was pressed, her movements deliberate. "That's so?" "Mm-hmm." Jessa sat at the table, stirring her smoothie with exaggerated innocence. "I've been doing a lot of reading. There's new science about aging and cognition, gut health, memory retention, all kinds of good stuff." Her smile widened. "We want you to feel your best." Harper entered quietly, still in pajama pants and a hoodie, her dark hair tied back. She sat across from Lorraine and pulled out her phone like any other distracted teenager. But her thumb hovered just long enough on the screen. Record. Lorraine placed her tea down and sat slowly. The chair creaked beneath her. Or maybe that was the tension in the room stretching to its limits. She met Jessa's eyes. No blink, no smile, just steady. "Did you forge my name?" The silence cracked like a dropped plate. Jessa's smile faltered. "A beat too long." "Then what?" "Lorraine, that's no. Why would I do that?" Harper didn't move, but her grip on the phone tightened. Lorraine's voice was soft. "You tell me." Jessa gave a small laugh. "Too high, too forced. We're trying to help you. You've seemed off lately, losing things, forgetting dates." She reached across the table, but Lorraine didn't flinch. "No one's accusing you of anything. We're just worried." Lorraine sipped her tea. Calm, controlled. "You should worry." Harper's thumb slid across the screen. "Saved." Jessa leaned back, folding her arms in mock offense. "Matt and I talked about how to keep you safe. That's all. We never." She stopped. "I mean, if there's some misunderstanding, we can go to the bank and—" Lorraine stood abruptly. "You touched the mail yesterday." Jessa blinked. "What?" "The pamphlet, from Golden Oaks. You pulled it out before I got to the box." Jessa's face tensed. "I was being helpful." Lorraine opened a drawer, pulled out a small evidence bag, and carefully sealed the glass Jessa had used. Helpful people don't need to cover their tracks. Jessa's gaze flicked to Harper, who stared back coldly. "I think," Jessa said, standing up too, "you're confused. And paranoid." Lorraine tilted her head. "Paranoia's just pattern recognition with teeth." Jessa scoffed. "You need help. Real help. I have it." Lorraine walked to the hallway and disappeared into her bedroom. She returned moments later with a box of manila folders and her fireproof document pouch. Each paper Jessa had touched in the last week, loan brochures, bank slips, even the leftover deed envelope, had been neatly stacked, untouched by Lorraine's own fingers. "You keep records now?" Jessa asked, incredulous. "No," Lorraine said. "I keep evidence." Harper watched Jessa, noting the twitch in her jaw, the way her hands trembled just slightly before she shoved them into her pocket. Lorraine turned to Harper. "Would you ask Clay to meet us this afternoon? Tell him I need a revocation packet and a restriction clause." Jessa's voice went sharp. "You're seriously involving Clay in this?" Lorraine didn't even glance her way. "He was your father-in-law's best friend. And mine. So yes." As Harper left the room, Jessa grabbed a dish rag and began wiping down the counter with jerky, unnecessary movements. Lorraine stepped into the living room and paused near the doorway. Her ears were still sharp, and she'd learned long ago when not to leave entirely. Jessa's voice drifted behind her, low and vicious. "If she won't go quietly, we'll force it." Lorraine didn't move. She just adjusted her glasses, turned her face toward the morning sun, and made a quiet promise to herself. Let them try. Lorraine sat stiffly in the back seat of Matt's SUV, her purse clutched like a shield across her lap. The leather creaked with every slow breath she took. Out the window, Lexington rolled past, quiet cul-de-sacs, tidy mailboxes, crepe myrtles swaying against the hot August air. "We just want you to see it," Jessa said from the front, twisting around with a grin too polished to be casual. "No pressure, Lorraine, just a preview." "A preview of what?" Lorraine asked, her voice like cool steel. Matt kept his eyes on the road. "It's just a tour, Mom." They pulled into the circular drive of Golden Oaks senior residences, where the landscaping looked too perfect, like something out of a developer's dream. Lorraine noted the glossy brochures in the lobby, smiling old couples gardening together, a golden retriever lying on someone's orthopedic shoes. Inside, the air was cold and lemon-scented. A woman in coral scrubs greeted them with a rehearsed brightness. "Welcome, Kinsey family. We've been expecting you." Of course you have, Lorraine thought. The staff ushered them past a sitting room filled with oversized puzzles and watercolor paintings taped to the walls. Lorraine walked slowly, eyes scanning. No clocks, cameras in the corners, quiet elevator music hummed overhead. "This is the activity room," said the guide. "Yoga in the mornings, crafts in the afternoon. Very stimulating," Lorraine murmured. "And do you offer lockable rooms?" The guide blinked. Not exactly. Most residents don't need." "I would," Lorraine said. "Where I come from, people respect personal boundaries." Matt cleared his throat. They continued on. A nurse smiled and nodded as they passed a room labeled Cognitive Enrichment Therapy Suite. Jessa chirped, "Isn't this lovely? So warm and modern." Lorraine stopped. "I notice the doors here require key codes. Do residents know the codes, or are they escorted?" The guide's smile didn't waver, but her eyes flickered. "Escorts are standard. For safety." "Of course," Lorraine said, making a note in the tiny spiral notebook she'd pulled from her bag. Harper had given it to her 2 weeks ago. "To document weirdness," she'd said. Lorraine hadn't thought she'd need it so soon. In the dining hall they passed another couple seated at a table. One woman stared out the window, unmoving. Her glass was full, her plate untouched. Lorraine met her eyes. The woman didn't blink. The tour ended in a private preview suite, with soft carpet, a mounted TV and a window overlooking the parking lot. Lorraine sat down on the edge of the neatly made bed, folded her hands and looked at Matt. "This where you were planning to drop me today?" Matt looked startled. "What?" Jessa laughed too loudly. "Lorraine, that's not. This is just a visit." Lorraine didn't smile. "I see. I suppose the appointment confirmation I received was just coincidence." Matt blinked. Jessa's fingers tapped rapidly against her purse. That afternoon, back at home, Lorraine sat across from Harper at the kitchen table, the tension between them almost humming. "They were going to leave you there today," Harper said finally, her voice low. "I heard them in the garage last night. Mom said you'd adjust eventually." Lorraine exhaled through her nose. She has no idea who she's dealing with. Upstairs, she emptied her drawer into a new lockbox. Passport, will, insurance forms, Clay's emergency contact list. Every page was sleeved and labeled. She set it on the floor of her closet and slid a towel over it. Then she dialed Val. By evening, every account linked to the house had been flagged. No movement, no transfers, no surprises. Lorraine stood by the window, watching Jessa's car back into the driveway again. Same fake smile when she waved. Same power play, different costume. Her phone buzzed. Voicemail. She played it on speaker. "Hi, this is Naomi from Notary Plus, just calling to confirm your appointment for 3 p.m. today. Quick claim deed signing. If anything's changed, feel free to call us back. Thanks." Lorraine didn't speak, didn't breathe. She just stared out the window, watching her own reflection grow sharper in the glass. Lorraine didn't bother with lipstick or earrings. Her blouse was pressed, her shoes were sensible, and the canvas folder under her arm was heavier than paper should ever feel. She moved with quiet fury through the morning light, every footstep echoing in her mind like a gavel. By the time she stepped into Clay Rowan's office, her pulse was calm, her nerves were not. "She set an appointment I never agreed to," she said, barely waiting for Clay to close the office door behind her. The notary left a voicemail. 3 o'clock. Quick claim deed. Clay frowned, already reaching for his phone. You didn't book anything with a Naomi? No one gets to transfer my house without a court order or a corpse, Lorraine said flatly. And I'm still breathing. Clay tapped his desk phone. Give me 5 minutes. 10 minutes later they were on speakerphone with the notary. Naomi sounded cheerful at first, then confused, then rattled. She said she was you. Naomi said. Had the paperwork printed, ID scanned and submitted digitally. She said she was updating the ownership for Medicaid qualification. Do you have a copy of the document she brought? Clay asked. A pause. I do. I can email it over. The file arrived within moments. Lorraine watched the printer spit out the pages, the black ink crisp on white, until she saw it. Her name, a second name beneath it, and a signature that tried too hard to match hers. She stepped forward slowly, squinting at the curve of the L plus the slant was off. The baseline dipped on the third letter. Whoever forged it knew her loops, but not her muscle memory. Clay exhaled sharply. This isn't sloppy. This is deliberate. He opened his laptop and began typing. This gives us grounds. I'm filing a fraud report now, and a title contest that'll put a freeze on any transfer attempts until the case is resolved. Lorraine's fingers brushed the desk, anchoring herself. I want it on record that I didn't just suspect something I knew. You'll need to take a capacity assessment, Clay said gently, just to shut down any argument that you're confused or impaired. It's standard, but it helps. I'll schedule it today, Lorraine replied. I want every test they've got. Clay looked up. You're doing this fast. Lorraine gave a sharp, humorless smile. She did it first. That afternoon, Lorraine sat beneath fluorescent lights at her physician's office, running memory drills and motor skills tests. Her hands were steady, her recall sharp, her sarcasm intact. When the doctor said no concerns, cognitive functions above average for her age, Lorraine smiled for the first time all day. On the way home, she stopped by the credit union. Val McCree met her near the teller desk, brow furrowed. I was just about to call you, Val said, pulling Lorraine aside. She tried to access your equity, Val whispered. Said she was co-owner and applying for a HELOC. We flagged it when the system showed a pending title change in the county database. We've got the attempt in writing, signature and all. Val handed Lorraine a printed affidavit. She really thinks I won't fight, Lorraine muttered, folding the document neatly into her purse. Back at Clay's office, the injunction paperwork was ready. It bore a simple title, Request for Emergency Asset Protection, Property ID #47391K. No access, no refinancing, no sale. Clay slid the folder across the desk. Once this is filed, Jess is legally frozen out. Any attempt to interfere after this counts as criminal contempt. Lorraine signed without hesitation. She tried to steal my house, she said quietly. She made it about age, about control. She thinks I'm too slow to stop her. Clay nodded. She made a mistake. When Lorraine returned home that evening, Harper was waiting on the porch with 2 glasses of lemonade and an iPad open to the county clerk's site. They tried to change the mailing address too, she said, showing the screen. Wanted all notices to go to a P.O. box downtown. Lorraine shook her head slowly. She's greedy, but not careful. The porch light flickered as dusk settled over the neighborhood. Lorraine was halfway through a sip when a sleek gray sedan pulled into the driveway. The engine idled for a beat before the door opened. A tall woman in a navy blazer stepped out and walked toward the porch, badge clipped to her hip, hair pulled tight beneath a Lexington PD cap. Mrs. Kinsey? She asked. Lorraine set down her glass. The woman offered her hand. Detective Aaron Sloan. Mind if I ask you a few questions? Lorraine adjusted her glasses. Not at all. Harper didn't knock. She walked straight into Lorraine's room with purpose and her phone clenched tightly in her hand. Lorraine was seated at her writing desk, glasses on, her pen gliding across creamy notepaper. She looked up, the quiet weight of the last few days etched across her expression. She bragged about it, Harper said, voice taut with disbelief. Called you the final boss. Thought she was funny. Lorraine set her pen down. Show me. Harper unlocked her phone and opened the recording app. 3 files. The kitchen, the garage, and this one, last night in the hallway. She hit play. Jessa's voice. She's practically half-blind, Matt. If she forgets what day it is, they'll think it's dementia, not fraud. Matt muted, hesitant. I don't think we should push her like this. What if she gets someone involved? Jessa, then we'll say she's paranoid. I've been documenting everything. She's unstable. And if that doesn't work, we'll file her as medically incompetent. Lorraine said nothing. She just reached for the lockbox key on her necklace. Detective Sloane sat at the dining table. 15 minutes later, her expression unreadable. Earbuds in as she reviewed the recordings. Harper watched her like a hawk, chin lifted, eyes flinty. Lorraine poured 2 cups of tea, placed one beside the detective, and sat quietly until the audio stopped. Sloane removed the earbuds slowly. This is direct, too direct, and stupid. I raised a tech-savvy granddaughter, Lorraine said, folding her hands. They didn't account for that. Sloane gave a tight nod. This gives me more than enough to open a financial coercion investigation. I'll need a copy of everything. Already backed up, Harper said, reaching into her backpack. 2 encrypted drives. Labeled. Sloane smiled faintly. You ever consider law enforcement? Harper shrugged. I considered not watching my grandmother get railroaded. Guess that counts. Back in her bedroom, Lorraine unlocked the black metal box beneath her bed. She placed the letter on top of the deed folder, handwritten in blue ink, signed with her full name. Walter, it began. They came for the house. I stood in the doorway. She slid the box closed, locked it, and placed it beneath a stack of quilted blankets she hadn't used since winter. That afternoon, Clay's email came through. The criminal complaint had been filed with the local DA. Attempted property theft, financial fraud, and elder coercion. Attached were scanned copies of the forged deed, the notary confirmation, and 3 highlighted excerpts from the recordings Harper had captured. Lorraine replied with a single line, add Matt's name to the record. Passive isn't innocent. Val called as dusk settled over the neighborhood. Thought you should know, she said quietly. I went back a few weeks in your checking history. Found 3 transfers, small ones, 50 here, 75 there. Rounded numbers, always late at night. They were rerouted to a side account. Matt opened 3 years ago. Under Jessa's name? Lorraine asked. No. Under Harper's. Lorraine's spine stiffened. She tried to make it look like Harper was stealing from me? That's my guess, Val said. It didn't work. The timestamps make no sense. Harper was in school during 2 of them. I've written a full affidavit and sent it to Clay. Thank you, Val. You don't owe me thanks. Just take care of yourself. The next morning, Lorraine sat at the kitchen table and drafted a new will. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She removed Matt's name and Jessa's entirely. Harper was named sole heir and executor, contingent on being over 18 at the time of enactment. She signed it cleanly, in block print. Then she folded the old one in half, opened the trash bin, and dropped it in without ceremony. It was Harper's scream that broke the quiet. Lorraine rushed up the stairs, her feet steady, her grip firm on the railing. She found Harper standing frozen in the doorway of her grandmother's bedroom, phone in hand. The flashlight beam illuminated a dark figure crouched beside the dresser. Jessa. She turned slowly, her hand still inside the drawer, fingers wrapped around the ribbon edge of Lorraine's jewelry box. What the hell are you doing? Harper demanded. Jessa straightened, lips curling into something between a smile and a snarl. Just checking on her medications. You don't belong in here, Lorraine said coldly, her voice razor sharp. Jessa stepped forward. And you don't know what's coming. Lorraine reached for her phone. No, she said. But I know who to call. Lorraine didn't sleep that night. Not after finding Jessa elbow deep in her drawer, fingers tangled in her jewelry like they belonged there. She sat in her armchair until the sun began to rise, her phone in one hand and the deed box at her feet. At exactly 7:01 a.m., she dialed. Detective Sloane, came the voice on the other end, calm and alert. She was in my room, Lorraine said. Without permission. Digging. There was a beat. Then Sloane replied, I'll meet you at the courthouse in an hour. We're filing today. The walls of the Fayette County Courthouse were the same shade of beige they'd been for decades, cool, bureaucratic, and unfeeling. Lorraine walked with steady steps, her cardigan neatly folded over one arm, Harper by her side like a silent sentry. Sloane met them at the security checkpoint, already holding a manila folder thick with affidavits. She has no idea what she triggered, Sloane muttered. They took the elevator to the fourth floor, where Clay was already pacing near the clerk's office. His suit was wrinkled, and he hadn't shaved. I filed the emergency petition, he said without restraining order citing elder intimidation, property interference, and unauthorized access to protected documents. You'll both need to testify. I brought Harper's statement, Lorraine said, handing over a handwritten page. Clay skimmed it quickly. This is good, but we'll need her to say it aloud. Harper spoke before anyone else could. I'm ready. The courtroom was cold. Not temperature, just airless, clinical. The kind of place where even truth felt rehearsed. Jessa sat at the far table, flanked by a cheap attorney in scuffed loafers and too much cologne. She wore a soft blue sweater, hair pulled into a tight bun, and an expression of absolute victimhood. Lorraine didn't look at her. Not once. Judge Klein reviewed the petition quietly, nodding as Sloane approached the bench and submitted the evidence, the recordings, the notary voicemail, the forged deed, and a printed affidavit from Val at the credit union. Then came Harper. She stood in her hoodie and jeans, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Her voice didn't tremble. She told my dad she'd make sure Grandma didn't interfere, she said. That was her exact wording. If she won't go quietly, we'll force it. I heard it, and I recorded it. The judge looked over his glasses at Jessa. Is that your voice in the recordings? Her lawyer whispered something urgently, but Jessa didn't answer. She just crossed her legs and stared at the floor. Judge Klein nodded once. I find sufficient cause to grant the emergency protective order. Jessica Kinsey, you are legally prohibited from entering the residence at 145 Sunny Briar Lane, or contacting Mrs. Lorraine Kinsey, in any direct or indirect form, until further review. Jessa turned sharply toward Matt, who was sitting quietly in the back row. Say something, she hissed. Matt didn't move. Outside the courthouse, the air was thick with humidity. The clouds had rolled in, bloated and gray. Matt caught up to Lorraine near the courthouse steps. Can we talk? He asked. Harper stepped between them, but Lorraine held up her hand. Let him. Matt looked tired. Older, like a man who'd been dodging his reflection for too long. She took it too far, he said. But she's scared. She thought she was helping. Maybe not in the right way, but she forged my name, Matt, Lorraine said, eyes steady. She stole from me, lied to my face, broke into my bedroom. She panicked. She wanted us to be secure. Lorraine didn't blink. And you? What did you want? Matt looked down at the pavement. Don't ruin the family over one mistake, he mumbled. Lorraine stepped forward, voice low and sharp. Then why are there 3 forged documents with your initials on them? Matt's eyes snapped up, wide now. Clay appeared beside them, holding a fresh envelope. We just pulled another digital submission from the recorder's office. Guess whose account login it came from? Matt opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Lorraine turned away, calm as a sunrise. I'm not ruining the family, she said over her shoulder. I'm rescuing myself from it. Lorraine didn't knock on the door of the guest suite where Matt had been sleeping. She turned the knob slowly and stepped inside, the smell of old cologne and detergent mingling in the air. Her son sat hunched on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, fingers laced in front of his face, like a man already mid-confession. She set the folder down beside him, without a word. Inside were the printed screenshots of account login activity, the submission trail from the county records portal, and the digital fingerprint tags traced back to Matt's work computer. Neatly clipped on top was the notary's confirmation form, filed under his user ID. He didn't look at her, just stared at the folder as if it had teeth. I didn't sign anything myself, he said quietly. But you watched her, Lorraine replied. And you didn't stop her. I thought she was planning ahead, he said, finally meeting her eyes. She said it was a safety net. Just paperwork. That you'd never notice. And I was tired, Mom. Every day it's something with Harper. The mortgage, work. She was always one step ahead. Lorraine crossed the room, each footstep deliberate. I buried your father in that suit you're wearing now. You know that. Matt froze. He trusted you to protect what was his. So did I. His shoulders sagged. I thought we were helping you. You let her make me small, Lorraine said, her voice low, unwavering. That's not helping. That's betrayal. Matt looked away again. I didn't think it would go this far. It didn't just go this far, she said. You let it. She picked up the folder and walked out without waiting for him to respond. Later that morning, Lorraine met Clay at the library conference room. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as he drafted the revised estate documents, his fingers tapping briskly at the keyboard. You're sure? He asked. Yes. Removing Matt entirely from the trust, no inheritance, no power of attorney, no succession access. Yes, Lorraine said again. Harper only. He's made his loyalties clear. Clay didn't argue. He just kept typing. At the credit union, Val greeted Lorraine at the front desk and guided her into the back office with a look of concern. I flagged another one, she said, pulling up her screen. Jessa submitted a form to redirect your retirement disbursements into a custodial account, said it was to help you manage funds in early-stage decline. Lorraine closed her eyes for one long moment. We caught it before anything processed, Val said. But the form included your social, your routing info and a fake signature. Again. Keep it all, Lorraine said. Send copies to Clay and Sloan. Val leaned in, her voice low. She's desperate, and desperate gets sloppy. That evening, Harper sat on the back porch with her earbuds in, knees pulled to her chest. Lorraine joined her without a word, sitting beside her and staring out at the overgrown garden Walter used to prune every Sunday. He cried, Lorraine said finally. Matt. But not because he was sorry. Because he got caught being silent. Harper pulled out one earbud. She always called him her project. He thought that meant he was being loved. But really he was being remodeled. Lorraine nodded. I see that now. Harper turned. You don't have to forgive him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. There was a long silence between them. Then Harper added. You know what gets me? He didn't just pick her. He stayed picked. The porch light flickered on as the sun dipped below the trees. Lorraine stood and walked back inside, her phone buzzing as she stepped through the door. It was Detective Sloan. She answered on the second ring. Lorraine Kinsey. Sloan's voice was brisk. We just recovered a deleted audio file from Harper's backup drives. What's on it? Lorraine asked. You'll want to hear this in person. The conference room at the precinct was small and windowless, painted in a bland off-white that seemed to hum with fluorescent fatigue, but the air was taut, electric with the promise of something irreversible. Detective Sloan pressed play with one steady finger, and the room exhaled into silence. Lorraine sat upright, hands clasped in her lap, not blinking. The recording crackled to life, tinny at first, then unmistakably clear. Jessa's voice spilled out like venom dressed in velvet. Jessa, I don't see why we're waiting. Once it's in our names, she's irrelevant. Matt, muffled. What if she finds out? Jessa. Then we gaslight her. She's old, remember? People expect them to be confused. We'll say she signed it and forgot. Or that she asked us to handle it. Matt, this is your thing, Jess. I didn't, Jessa. Exactly. So keep it that way. Let me do the dirty work. You get plausible deniability. I get the house. Everybody wins. The silence afterward was suffocating. Harper didn't move. Clay sat rigid, face pale beneath his sun-weathered skin. Sloan reached forward and clicked pause, then looked at Lorraine. You okay? Lorraine nodded once. Can we submit that to the DA? Clay answered for her. Absolutely. That recording is admissible under Kentucky's one-party consent statute, especially in fraud and coercion cases. She didn't just confess, she mapped the whole scheme. And Matt? Lorraine asked. Her voice was steady, but something behind her eyes had shifted, like a lock clicking shut from the inside. He doesn't stop it, Sloane said. He doesn't say no. That makes him complicit under passive participation statutes. Clay stood and pulled out his phone. I'll notify the DA myself. We'll escalate to felony-level financial abuse of an elder. Lorraine took a slow breath. The room smelled faintly of burned coffee and old vinyl. She felt it settle into her chest. Truth, undeniable now, hard and cold like a stone she'd been carrying far too long. I knew they were circling, she said, her voice quiet. But hearing her plan my erasure like it was a checklist, she didn't cry, she didn't break. Harper sat back, folding her arms. Do you regret not fighting back sooner? Lorraine didn't answer right away. She reached into her purse, pulled out a peppermint, and unwrapped it carefully. The crackle of cellophane filled the room. I don't regret watching, she said at last. I regret assuming they'd stop. Clay raised an eyebrow. They picked the wrong woman. Sloane's phone buzzed. She checked the screen, then stood. Well, she said, slipping the phone into her pocket. Let's make this official. Jessa was standing in front of her ring light on the porch when the cruiser pulled up, phone angled perfectly, wind blowing her hair, just enough for movement, but not enough for chaos. Her voice rang out, falsely sweet. Hey guys, so I wanted to talk about what it really means to show up for family, because sometimes, Jessica Kinsey. The officer stepped into frame before she could edit the cut. Jessa blinked, lips still parted. I'm serving you with a formal notice of criminal charges, fraud, financial coercion, forgery, elder abuse. The camera stayed on, catching her entire stumble backward, catching the shake in her voice as she whispered, What? No, that's not. Her phone clattered to the porch boards. The officer handed her a manila envelope. Her fingers didn't close around it fast enough. Effective immediately, he said. You're not to contact Lorraine Kinsey in any capacity. A summons to appear before the district judge will follow. From across the street, Lorraine watched from her window. She didn't gloat, didn't smile, just watched. Harper joined her quietly, arms crossed. She was mid-live stream, Harper murmured. Lorraine didn't respond. She just adjusted her glasses, as if the world had finally come into focus. Across the street, Jessa stood frozen in the porch light glow, the envelope in one hand, her curated life flickering off-screen. By Thursday morning, the algorithm had turned on Jessa. Her once pristine Instagram grid, filtered brunches, faux spontaneous hugs with Matt, motivational carousels about self-care, was overrun with comments she couldn't delete fast enough. Didn't you steal your Emile's house? Fraud isn't a wellness strategy. Free Lorraine trending in Kentucky? By noon, 2 brand partnerships had severed ties publicly. One posted a screenshot of the indictment under the caption, We do not condone elder exploitation in any form. The social media management app she once boasted about on TikTok sent a polite but final email. Your account has been flagged for TOS violations and engagement manipulation. You are no longer eligible for paid promotions. In less than 24 hours, Jessa Kinsey went from micro-influencer to digital pariah, and Lorraine hadn't posted a single thing. The local news ran a segment that evening, faces blurred, names technically unspoken, but in a town like Lexington, nobody needed the subtitles. An unnamed widow in the sunny Briar Lane area, the anchor said, was nearly defrauded of her home in a scheme involving falsified deeds, notary abuse, and potential family coercion. Matt's co-workers at the regional security software firm didn't need a formal HR meeting. He was put on leave by Friday. The memo was brief, pending investigation into personal conduct, potentially in conflict with client trust policies. In contrast, Lorraine's phone buzzed with a different kind of attention. The library's community coordinator, Karen Hurst, invited her to speak about estate planning during Elder Awareness Month. They think I'm some kind of folk hero, Lorraine said dryly. Well, Harper replied, arching an eyebrow. You didn't stab her, so technically you are. The first legacy and legal talk drew 15 people. By the second week they were pulling out extra chairs. Lorraine stood in front of the reading room whiteboard, with bullet points scrawled in tidy, firm block print. Power of attorney row. Power over you. Don't trust family without paper. If it feels wrong, document everything. Harper sat in the front row each time, laptop open, nodding like she was watching a masterclass. After the third event, a woman in a knit poncho pulled Lorraine aside and whispered, You saved my house. My daughter tried the same thing last year. Lorraine just nodded. Next time, save yourself faster. At the credit union, Val moved with brisk confidence, snapping open account screens like pages in a familiar novel. Last 2 joint accounts have been frozen, she said. No withdrawals, no lingering access. Even if Matt tries to claim accidental co-signature, there's no longer any open path. Lorraine exhaled. Good. I also updated your security questions, Val added with a smirk. None of them involve birthdays or maiden names anymore. What did you change them to? Val smiled. Obscure Kentucky bourbon trivia. Lorraine chuckled. Excellent. That night, the rain tapped steadily on the windows, soaking the porch steps and softening the soil in the backyard beds. Lorraine had just finished folding laundry when she heard Harper call out from the foyer. Grandma? Lorraine came down the hallway, drying her hands on a dish towel. Harper held up a single sheet of paper. Crisp, white, laser printed, no handwriting, no smudges. It had been slid beneath the front door like a message in a bottle, except this one reeked of cowardice. Harper read it aloud. Tell your grandmother to stop, or we'll stop her another way. Lorraine took the letter, scanning it with practiced calm. Typed, she muttered. No return address. Threats always sound bolder in Times New Roman. Should we call Sloane? Harper asked, eyes sharp. Not yet, Lorraine said, folding the paper neatly. We document, then we wait. But wait for what? Lorraine turned toward the door, her voice low and clear. For the next mistake. Lorraine placed the letter in a gallon-sized Ziploc bag and set it gently on the kitchen table, beside her tea. The plastic crinkled as she pressed the seal shut, careful not to smudge the corners. She didn't need it to scream, just to sit there and speak plainly. Detective Sloane arrived within the hour. No sirens, no uniform, just a navy blazer and the same quiet fire in her eyes that had only grown since the first forged signature. She picked up the bag without a word and held it to the light, her brow furrowed. Clean, she muttered. Too clean. Typed, Lorraine said, pouring a second cup of tea. No signature, no return address. Threats written like bad poetry. Sloane sat down across from her. We'll run prints, of course. But even better, we've got the paper. Office supply grade, Harper asked from the hallway. Arms crossed, Sloane nodded. Premium inkjet, 24-pound bond. That narrows it down. Lorraine took a sip of tea. To about 100 people in Lexington. Not exactly. Sloane opened her tablet, swiped a few times and turned the screen toward them. County Registry already has Jess's printer signature on file from the forged quitclaim deed. Ink density, calibration alignment, even microabrasion from the fuser roller. Matches are like fingerprints. Lorraine set her cup down. So we know it came from her house. Sloane nodded again. And likely by her hand. She's panicking, Lorraine said softly, not triumphantly. That's the language of desperation. It's not strategy anymore. It's reflex. By noon, Clay had filed for a restraining order extension, this time citing targeted harassment and intimidation. The courthouse clerk barely blinked as she stamped the paperwork. Looks like she's digging her own grave, Clay muttered, sliding the stamped copy into his briefcase. All we have to do is keep the record clean. Then I'll make sure the cameras are running, Harper said. That evening, Harper and Lorraine set up 2 motion-triggered security cameras, one on the porch, the other angled across the driveway. Harper adjusted the settings from her tablet, while Lorraine stood beside her, watching dusk settle over the hydrangeas. No blind spots, Harper said. They notify your phone immediately if there's movement. Good, Lorraine murmured. Because this house is done being quiet. It happened at 2:17 a.m. The chime of a soft ping woke Lorraine from a light sleep. She reached for her glasses and tapped the notification on her phone. The porch camera had captured a figure in a hoodie, stepping lightly across the concrete. The face was turned away, but the walk, the posture, even the glint of two expensive sneakers under moonlight were unmistakable. Jessa. She crouched beside the flower pot, pulled a folded sheet of paper from her sleeve, and slid it under the doormat like a burglar, leaving a calling card. And then she was gone, melting back into the shadows like the coward she'd become. By morning, Sloane had the footage in hand and a new report in progress. Unlawful contact, she confirmed. Violation of protective order, second degree. She didn't ring the bell, Harper said. Sitting at the kitchen island. She didn't have to, Sloane replied. Her presence was enough. Lorraine sat quietly at the table, the letter unopened. This one was handwritten. Sloppier. Dark ink smudged in the upper left corner where a finger had pressed too hard. You want to read it? Sloane asked. Lorraine shook her head. I don't need to. Sloane nodded and slipped it into her file folder. Anything else? She asked, standing. Lorraine reached for her tea, then paused as the doorbell rang. Clay entered a few moments later, coat damp from rain, a yellow envelope under his arm. Got something for you, he said, frowning. He slid it across the table. Kinsey Vit Kinsey. Preliminary civil filing, defamation and emotional distress. Harper stared at the cover sheet. You've got to be kidding. Lorraine read the top line, then looked up slowly. She's suing me. Clay nodded grimly. For defamation, public humiliation, and what she calls emotional terrorism. Lorraine leaned back in her chair. Well, she said, then it's a good thing we kept the receipts. Lorraine adjusted the lapels of her blazer in the courthouse bathroom mirror, her reflection firm but pale under the humming fluorescent lights. Behind her eyes was not fear, but fury aged and tempered into something sharper, more surgical. She stepped out into the hallway where Clay stood waiting with a box of neatly tabbed folders and a calm that looked borrowed from granite. She really went through with it. Lorraine said, sued me for emotional terrorism. Clay nodded, eyes cool. And we're going to reply the way truth always replies, with documentation. In courtroom 3B, Jessa arrived 15 minutes late and dressed in soft pastels, hair pulled into a low ponytail that screamed reasonable woman wronged. She smiled too much. She blinked too slowly. She avoided eye contact with Lorraine altogether. Her attorney, slick-suited and fresh out of some unfortunate ivy, stood and read the opening statement like he was auditioning for a mid-budget legal drama. My client, he said, gesturing as if Lorraine were an abstract concept, has suffered emotional degradation, reputational ruin, and undue mental anguish as a direct result of unfounded accusations. Lorraine didn't flinch. Harper sat behind her in the gallery, arms crossed, glaring daggers into the side of Jess's head. When Clay stood, he didn't gesture. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said, we submit a motion to dismiss based on ongoing criminal investigations, documented forgery, voice recordings, and the plaintiff's violation of 2 standing protective orders. The judge, Judge Colburn, silver-haired and unimpressed by theatrics, arched a brow. Let's see the evidence. The court clerk wheeled in a small cart, neatly stacked with binders. Inside, Sloane's full report, including a transcript of the recovered voice memo, fingerprint analysis on the forged deed, email confirmations from the notary, video of Jessa violating her restraining order, Val's affidavit about the attempted HELOC fraud, medical evaluation confirming Lorraine's mental capacity. And then Lorraine stood. I taught high school English for 32 years, she said, calm as a lake. And one thing I never allowed was plagiarism. She paused, eyes on Jessa now. That includes family. Gasps rippled through the back rows. The bailiff cleared his throat. The judge didn't blink. Jessa's attorney scrambled, muttering about emotional tone and irrelevant personal history. But Sloane was already stepping up with her badge in full view. There is no evidence, she said clearly, to support the plaintiff's claim of emotional trauma initiated by the defendant. However, there is substantial evidence confirming a months-long campaign of deception, fraud, and psychological manipulation led by the plaintiff against the defendant. She let the words land. Clay leaned toward the mic. In addition to our dismissal motion, Your Honor, we're filing a counterclaim for malicious prosecution and abuse of legal process. The judge folded his hands. Miss Kinsey, he said to Jessa, finally meeting her eyes. Is this lawsuit your attempt to delay the pending criminal charges against you? Jessa's attorney jumped in. Objection, don't bother. The judge cut him off. I've read the timeline. I'm not a fool. He turned to Lorraine. You've had more patience than I would have. Then he banged the gavel. Plaintiff's motion denied. Lawsuit dismissed with prejudice. All countersuits may proceed. Civil court will not be your shield. Jessa's face, until then composed, cracked. Her mouth opened as if to protest, but no sound came out. She reached for her phone instinctively, only to have it gently pushed down by her own attorney. Don't, he whispered. Outside, the summer heat pressed down like judgment. Lorraine stepped into the sunlight, head high. Well, she said to Clay, I suppose I'll teach one more lesson after all. Before he could respond, Sloane approached, holding her phone out. The DA just confirmed, she said. They're proceeding with felony charges. Grand juries cleared the way. Trials set for September. Lorraine took a long breath, the kind you take before the real work begins. Good, she said, because this time they'll have to hear everything. Jessa Kinsey walked into the courtroom like she was headed to a second-chance audition. Perfect blowout, soft blush, a beige pantsuit tailored to say harmless. But Lorraine saw it before anyone else did. The twitch in her jaw, the too-wide smile, the glint of calculation behind those doe-like eyes. The woman had rehearsed pity. She hadn't prepared for truth. The bailiff called order, and everyone rose as Judge Colburn entered, his black robes brushing the floor, expression carved from stone. The courtroom settled into a hush thick with air conditioning and anticipation. State of Kentucky v. Jessica Kinsey. The clerk read aloud. Charges: financial fraud, coercion, elder abuse, unlawful access to secured assets, and forgery. Your plea? The judge asked. Jessa stood. Not guilty, Your Honor. Not a flicker of remorse. Not a blink of hesitation. Just the same polished voice she used for brand deals and book club lies. Lorraine didn't react. She didn't need to. Her patience had matured into armor. Harper was called to the stand first. She walked with quiet purpose, her boots echoing slightly against the wood floor. Seated, she glanced briefly at Lorraine before turning to face the jury. There was no trembling in her voice, just heat under control. She treated my grandmother like she was disposable, Harper said, like she was a burden to clean up, something to flip and sell, like a house with bad wallpaper. Jessa looked away, jaw clenched. Harper continued. She forged signatures, lied, hid paperwork, smiled in her face while planning to lock her away. I heard it, I recorded it. Clay gave her a nod as she stepped down. Lorraine gripped the arms of her chair, equal parts pride and heartbreak tightening in her chest. Next came Val. She arrived with a binder so thick it looked like it could bruise a table. Calm and precise, she walked the jury through 3 unauthorized attempts to reroute funds, 2 flagged loan applications, and 1 staged assisted living financial prep document that included pre-signed power of attorney. None of these were legitimate, Val said firmly. All were submitted from digital devices traceable to the Kinsey home network, and none were authorized by the account holder, Mrs. Lorraine Kinsey. The jury scribbled furiously. Even the defense lawyer stopped objecting. Then came the documents. Clay wheeled in a poster board display. Old school, undeniable. On the left, Lorraine's authentic signature from the original deed. On the right, the forged one Jessa had submitted through a notary channel. To the untrained eye, Clay said, pointer in hand, This might seem close. But here, notice the loop in the K. Lorraine's hand doesn't loop like this. She's had arthritis since 2020. You'll also see the baseline here is perfectly smooth. But her real writing? Slight tremor. He tapped the paper. This wasn't her hand. This was an impersonation. That's not a mistake. It's a felony. Detective Sloane approached the stand with a presence that could slice granite. She played the voice memo, the full unedited version. No subtitles, no filters. Jessa's voice, once it's in our names, she's irrelevant. Matt, what if she figures it out? Jessa, she's old. She'll forget. And if not, we spin it. The courtroom went still. One juror's pen stopped moving. Another leaned forward slightly. It was the kind of silence that stretched past disbelief and into grim recognition. Sloane looked directly at the jury. No editing. No cuts. This is not someone being manipulated. This is someone mapping out how to erase her mother-in-law's life on record. And then it happened. Jessa stood, eyes wild, mouth twitching, and pointed at Matt, seated stiffly behind the defense table. This was his idea. She shouted. He gave me access. He knew everything. He signed off on it. He just didn't have the guts to do it himself. The courtroom erupted. Matt stood too. That's not true. The bailiff stepped forward. Sir, sit down. Jessa's voice rose. Check his login. Check his emails. He ordered. Judge Colburn roared, slamming the gavel. Mr. Kinsey, you're excused. Any further outbursts and you'll be held in contempt. Matt was escorted out, face pale as ash. Jessa sank back into her chair, breathing hard, sweat beading above her collarbone. And just like that, her mask cracked for good. By 3:47 p.m., the jury had returned. The courtroom filled once again. Lorraine stared straight ahead. The four-person rows. We, the jury, find the defendant, Jessica Kinsey, guilty on all counts. Jessa's breath caught, her mouth moved, but no words came. Lorraine didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She simply folded her hands and whispered to herself. Finally, the grass was damp from the morning dew, and the air smelled of wet soil and clipped lavender. Lorraine walked slowly across the backyard, the soft crunch of gravel beneath her flats. Harper a few steps beside her with hands tucked in the pockets of her windbreaker. It was the first quiet Sunday they'd had in months. No subpoenas, no lawyer calls, no blinds being peeked open from across the cul-de-sac. Lorraine stopped at the edge of the flower beds Walter had planted 30 years ago. He wanted blueberries back here, she said, squinting toward the back fence. Said it would keep the rabbits from chewing the tulips. He was wrong. Harper smiled faintly. I'll plant some anyway, just to make the rabbits feel invited. Lorraine handed her a folded envelope. Small, official, unassuming. Harper opened it and blinked twice. You really did it. It's your name on the trust now. Lorraine said. Not to use, not to sell, but to protect. This home's yours when the time is right. No conditions, no guilt. Harper stared down at the deed with both hands, her throat moving like she was trying to speak but couldn't get past the weight of it. Lorraine looked out over the yard again. I wanted the last page of this story to belong to someone who earned it, not someone who expected it. 2 days later, Clay poured 2 fingers of bourbon into a crystal glass and handed it to Lorraine in his now half-empty office. You know, he said, settling into the armchair, when your husband asked me to write that first will, he told me he wasn't worried about the money. He was worried about the people. Lorraine nodded. He saw it coming, didn't he? Not the details, but the rot? Yeah, he saw that early. She lifted her glass, to seeing things before they collapse. Clay raised his in return, to finally getting out before they do. He handed her a final envelope, the trust packet, the amended will, the deed reassignment, all signed and sealed. I'm officially retired, Lorraine, he said with a tired smile. No more Kinsey drama for me. You say that now. They both laughed. That afternoon, Lorraine sent one last certified letter to Jessa. It contained a single sheet of paper. No return address. No additional message. Just 8 words typed in clean, narrow font. May your next signature be your own. She included no return envelope. Detective Sloane stopped by later in the week, not in uniform, but with the same clipped walk and dry humor. Sentencing came through, she said, stepping onto the porch. Restitution, full repayment of misused funds, court fees, and she's permanently barred from holding a real estate license or working in any financial services. Good, Lorraine replied, pouring iced tea into 2 glasses. Let her learn how to clean something instead of steal it. Sloane smirked. You want me to read you the judge's remarks? No need. I've already won. Sloane took a slow sip. You know she's still trying to spin it online, right? Lorraine raised an eyebrow. Let her people know the truth. And truth doesn't trend, it endures. The final blow came quietly. Matt filed for divorce. Clay texted the update, short and sharp. Harper read the message out loud and shrugged. Took him long enough. Lorraine didn't comment. Just nodded once and returned to pruning the roses. The silence said everything. That evening, while dusting the bookshelf near Walter's old recliner, Lorraine found a small leather case tucked behind a row of outdated paperbacks. She opened it slowly. Her old glasses. The frames were slightly bent, the hinges stiff, but the lenses were clear. Not fogged, not cracked, just clear. She slipped them on, heart catching in her chest. Everything looked sharper. Not because she needed them now, but because she remembered what it felt like to lose clarity, and to fight for it back. She turned toward the window, dusk painting long shadows across the floor. About time, she murmured. There had been signs, of course, small sharp things Lorraine had swept into emotional corners for years. The passive-aggressive gifts. The unsolicited advice. The way Jessa's tone always softened when the conversation turned to wills or bank accounts, like she was already mentally divvying up what hadn't yet been lost. But Lorraine had stayed silent, not because she was afraid, because she thought silence, in its own way, was love, grace, a kind of dignity. I thought giving them the benefit of the doubt would protect me, she said now, standing behind a wooden lectern in a classroom full of college students. But what it actually did was give them room to write me out. The students sat still, some taking notes, others just staring. A few had grandparents, probably. Some of them were grandchildren, just like Harper. But none of them looked away. She smiled softly. Elder doesn't mean easy to erase. It just means we've seen more drafts. There was a brief ripple of applause when she stepped down. Not polite, not pitied, earned. Harper was waiting in the hallway, backpack slung over one shoulder, a folded envelope in her hand. Her face was unreadable. I got in, she said. Lorraine raised an eyebrow. Both? Harper nodded. Louisville and UK, full rides. One's got journalism, the other's got pre-law. Either way, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. Lorraine slipped the envelope from her hand and tucked it under her arm. You've already done the hard part, she said. Now pick the one that keeps your soul intact. Harper blinked back something wet and fast. I think I'm staying close. For now. Lorraine nodded. You'll go when it's time, not before. At the credit union, Val had rearranged the wall behind the teller counter. She'd moved the old certificates, the employee of the month photos, and framed a single article dead center. Kinsey Veuve Kinsey. The Courtroom Truth. The local paper had printed it 2 weeks earlier. It wasn't sensational. It wasn't dramatic. Just facts, laid bare. Names, dates, signatures, and one photo: Lorraine, walking out of the courthouse, her head high and her granddaughter's hand in hers. Val straightened it every morning. She didn't say why. Sloane showed up on Saturday afternoon, her badge tucked away, no formal business, just 2 coffees and a quiet smile. She handed one to Lorraine, and stood on the porch for a long minute before speaking. You changed things, she said. We used to file this kind of stuff under family dispute. Now there's a checklist, a response protocol, mandatory financial review, if elder coercion is even mentioned. Lorraine took a sip. It was black, just the way she liked it. I wasn't the first, she said. But you were the first to see it through, Sloane replied. All the way to the end. They sat in silence, watching the leaves fall across the lawn. The trees were turning, finally. Crisp golds, burnt oranges, no more stifling summer heat, just clarity. Later that evening, the smell of onions sautéing filled the kitchen, warm and earthy. Harper was barefoot, moving between the stove and the cutting board with practiced ease. "I'm using real garlic this time," she said. Over her shoulder, "not that stuff in the jar." Lorraine chuckled from the table, adjusting her old glasses on her nose. The frames were still slightly bent. Harper had offered to replace them, but Lorraine declined. She liked the imperfection. It reminded her that even broken things could be clear. She looked around the kitchen, sunset spilling over the countertops, the clock ticking softly, a recipe card tucked under a magnet shaped like Kentucky. It wasn't peace, not entirely, but it was hers, and it was earned. As Harper stirred the pot, humming something soft and off-key, Lorraine leaned back in her chair and let her gaze drift out the window. A backyard quiet, stars beginning to blink awake. "She took my glasses," Lorraine said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. "But I never stopped seeing. I just waited until I liked what I saw."